Nestled at the edge of a bustling town, our neighborhood is a series of quiet streets lined with charming houses and manicured lawns. Each home has its own character, some adorned with flower gardens that burst into color each spring, while others boast clean, contemporary designs that reflect the evolving tastes of modern living. Despite these differences, there exists a certain camaraderie among residents, a shared norm of waving hello while walking their dogs or exchanging pleasantries at the local market. Most neighbors enjoy an unspoken agreement to keep things cordial. Barbecues in the summer and impromptu get-togethers foster strong friendships, though the occasional rift can sour these relationships. The community atmosphere is generally friendly, children run freely, playing tag between houses while parents keep an eye on them from porches and front yards. However, it's also a place where unwritten rules govern behaviors, especially regarding property lines and driveway etiquette. The close-knit nature of our neighborhood often leads to heightened sensitivities. Everyone feels entitled to voice their opinions, particularly regarding any disruption in routine. For instance, one resident's momentary lapse, like parking a car in front of someone's driveway, can set off a chain reaction of discontent that spirals quickly out of control. In our neighborhood, community living has taken on a dual nature, at times warm and welcoming, while at other moments, rigid and unforgiving. The perception of shared existence fosters both support and scrutiny. While many relish the comforts of neighborly assistance, others believe they have a duty to uphold the rules at all costs. This tension forms an undercurrent in our interactions, revealing that even in the most harmonious environments, conflict can simmer just beneath the surface, ready to erupt when least expected. In this intricate tapestry of our neighborhood, I stand as an observer and sometimes a participant in the unfolding drama that defines community life. I'm a relatively easygoing person who believes in the importance of flexibility and understanding in everyday situations. My philosophy revolves around the notion that life is too short to sweat the small stuff, which often leads me to overlook minor inconveniences like blocking my own driveway for a short period. On the other side of this narrative is Karen, my neighbor across the street. With her impeccably tended flower beds and a well-organized yard, she takes immense pride in her property. However, her passion for perfection often veers into an obsession with rules, particularly those regarding property boundaries. Karen's personality is as vibrant as her garden. She can be charming and friendly during casual encounters, but when it comes to etiquette enforcement, she transforms into a self-appointed watchdog of our community standards. Our interactions have ranged from polite exchanges about gardening tips to tense discussions about yard maintenance and noise levels. There was that time I hosted a backyard barbecue where she showed up uninvited, only to express her disapproval of our music choice. The volume was apparently too loud for her taste. I brushed it off at the moment, but it was clear that our differing perspectives on neighborly conduct laid the groundwork for future complications. As we navigate this delicate balance between camaraderie and contention, it becomes evident that a single misstep, like temporarily blocking one's driveway, can provoke a reaction that spirals out of control. Little did I know that our dynamic would soon take center stage in an escalating conflict involving not just Karen, but our entire community as well. One sunny Saturday afternoon, I found myself in a bit of a parking bind. My cousin was visiting from out of town, and with the family gathering planned for later that day, I had a flurry of relatives arriving at various times. As the morning unfolded, our driveway quickly became a chaotic hub, a jumble of bags and coolers filled with food for the barbecue. In the midst of this bustling activity, I made the decision to temporarily block the end of my driveway to accommodate my cousin's car, ensuring that other visitors could easily park behind it. At first, it seemed like a reasonable choice. After all, it was just for a couple of hours. I figured I would keep an eye on the situation and move my car if anyone needed access. However, what felt like a simple logistical solution quickly morphed into a point of contention. As I was setting up for the barbecue, I noticed Karen glancing out her window with an expression that suggested she was already plotting her next move. Not long after, I heard the wail of sirens approaching. Initially confused, I stepped outside to see Karen standing by her front door, cell phone in hand, clearly pleased with herself. She had called 911 to report me blocking the driveway, an action she deemed completely unacceptable. As the police arrived, their bemused looks mirrored my disbelief. They explained that they had received a call about a vehicle obstructing access to a driveway, and while they understood the situation, it wasn't an emergency. This absurdity only heightened my frustration and embarrassment as I tried to explain to the officers that it was merely a temporary inconvenience. Little did I know that this incident would ignite a much larger conflict within our tightly knit community. As I was bustling around the backyard, preparing for the family barbecue, I caught sight of Karen through her window, her face a mix of disbelief and indignation. I could practically see the gears turning in her mind as she processed what she perceived to be a blatant disregard for community rules. It wasn't long before I noticed her step outside, her cell phone already in hand. In that moment, Karen made her decision. She believed it was her duty to uphold the neighborhood standards, even if it meant escalating a minor issue into a full-blown spectacle. With an air of authority, she dialed 911, convinced that my temporary measure warranted police intervention. To her, this was not just about a blocked driveway, it was about maintaining order and ensuring that everyone adhered to her interpretation of neighborhood etiquette. Meanwhile, as the sirens approached, I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. Did she really think this was an emergency? My frustration simmered as I glanced around, noticing other neighbors peeking out from their homes. Some appeared entertained by the unfolding drama, while others wore expressions of disapproval or concern. Whispers began circulating. I could hear snippets of conversations. Did you hear? She called the cops, and is it really that serious? When the police arrived, they were met with a scene that was anything but urgent. They seemed bemused as they approached me, asking for clarification on the situation. I explained that it was merely a temporary parking issue, yet I could see the incredulity on their faces as they realized the absurdity of the call. Karen stood nearby, arms crossed defiantly, as if waiting for an apology or perhaps validation for her overly dramatic response. The entire encounter felt surreal, highlighting the stark contrast between my laid-back approach to life and her rigid adherence to rules, setting the stage for further conflict in our community. As the police car pulled up, I felt a mixture of anxiety and disbelief. 2 officers emerged, clearly perplexed about what had warranted such a response. One officer, a seasoned veteran with a friendly demeanor, approached me first while his partner took a moment to assess the situation. I could already sense their skepticism. They were no doubt accustomed to far more pressing matters than neighborhood parking disputes. "Can you tell us what's going on?" the officer asked, glancing between me and Karen, who stood arms crossed like a sentinel guarding her domain. I began to explain that it was merely a temporary parking issue due to family visiting for the day and gestured towards my cousin's car. The officer nodded, then looked back at Karen. "What seems to be the problem here?" he inquired, trying to maintain his professionalism while gauging her reaction. Karen didn't hesitate. "This is an ongoing issue. Blocking driveways disrupts our community's harmony." Her tone was serious, but I couldn't help but notice an eye roll from the officer's partner, who was still surveying what could only be described as an elaborate setup for a barbecue. As I clarified that it was just a brief inconvenience, the veteran officer chuckled slightly. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "unless the driveway is permanently blocked or there's a real emergency, we can't really do anything here." The humor of it all diffused some of the tension. Even Karen seemed taken aback by the officer's nonchalant approach. I could almost see her ideal world of strict rules crumbling as she realized that her dramatic measure had drawn the attention of law enforcement over something so trivial. Before leaving, the officers advised both of us to discuss any future disputes civilly rather than involving 911, a suggestion that I hoped would echo through our community. As they drove off, I couldn't shake the feeling that this incident had not only highlighted Karen's fixation on order but also served as an absurd reminder of how quickly misunderstandings can spiral out of control in a close-knit neighborhood. In the wake of the incident involving the police, I knew it was only a matter of time before our homeowners association, HOA, became involved. The HOA had always prided itself on maintaining order within the community, and with Karen's penchant for rule enforcement, she wasted no time bringing the situation to their attention. Later that week, I received a formal letter inviting me to an HOA meeting to discuss neighborhood standards and driveway etiquette. As I entered the meeting room filled with chairs and familiar faces, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Karen sat front and center, her demeanor radiating a sense of satisfaction as though she were on trial for upholding the community's decorum. The HOA president, Mr. Henderson, called the meeting to order, explaining that they needed to address recent disturbances concerning parking and driveway use, specifically referencing my incident. After a brief overview of the HOA's rules regarding property boundaries and driveway usage, Karen seized her moment to voice her concerns. She expressed how critical it was for all residents to adhere strictly to these guidelines in order to prevent chaos from taking over our lovely neighborhood. Her passionate speech stirred murmurs among some attendees who nodded in agreement while others rolled their eyes at her self-righteousness. When it was my turn to speak, I highlighted the importance of flexibility in community living, emphasizing that sometimes emergencies or gatherings warrant temporary adjustments like blocking a driveway. I recounted how calling 911 for such a minor inconvenience seemed excessive and unnecessary. In response, Mr. Henderson suggested implementing clearer guidelines about driveway usage during peak times or special events, hoping to strike a balance between order and understanding. After much back-and-forth discussion, it became clear that while some residents echoed Karen's strict viewpoint, many others recognized the need for compromise. The outcome of that meeting underscored how our HOA served as both a governing body and a reflection of our community's diverse perspectives, an essential reminder that even in close-knit neighborhoods, differing opinions can lead to intense debates about what constitutes reasonable behavior. In the days following the HOA meeting, the neighborhood buzzed with mixed reactions regarding both the initial incident and the subsequent involvement of our homeowners association. Some residents, particularly those who had an affinity for order and decorum, rallied behind Karen. They praised her diligence in maintaining neighborhood standards, expressing their belief that a blocked driveway was an affront to community harmony. "If we allow things like that to slide," one neighbor declared during a casual conversation outside, "what's next? We might as well let people park on the lawn." Conversely, there were those who sided with me, shaking their heads at Karen's overzealousness. A few neighbors spoke openly about how they had also faced Karen's scrutiny for minor infractions in the past. One expressed frustration about an innocuous garden decoration that had drawn her ire. "It's just getting ridiculous. We should be looking out for each other, not nitpicking every little thing," they lamented. Moreover, some of my supporters found humor in the situation. Mary from 3 doors down joked at the playground, "Next time I have guests over, I'm just sending out smoke signals instead of parking on my driveway. I wouldn't want to get reported." Laughter erupted among parents as they watched their kids play. However, not every exchange was lighthearted. Several conversations veered into more serious territory, revealing deeper divisions within our otherwise friendly community. Whispers of alliances began to form. Those who felt strongly about order began clustering around Karen more frequently at neighborhood events, while those of us advocating for flexibility tended to band together during casual gatherings. The thread holding our neighborhood fabric together began to fray a bit as these differing perspectives came to light. It became increasingly clear that while some residents cherished strict adherence to rules as a means of fostering security and predictability, others valued a more relaxed approach that allowed for humanity's occasional messiness, a stark reminder that even in close-knit communities, varying opinions could lead not only to spirited debates but also to unforeseen fractures. The HOA meeting began with a palpable tension in the air, as residents settled into their seats, eager to discuss the recent driveway debacle. Mr. Henderson, the HOA president, called the meeting to order with a firm voice and brief introduction. He emphasized the importance of maintaining neighborhood standards but also acknowledged the need for open dialogue about the differing opinions that had surfaced. Karen was quick to raise her hand, her expression a mix of determination and righteousness. "We cannot allow such behavior to go unchecked. A blocked driveway is not just an inconvenience, it sets a precedent for disregard of our community guidelines." As she spoke, nods of agreement rippled through a section of the audience, those who valued order above all else. However, my supporters countered with a challenge. Lucy from down the block stood up, her tone calm yet assertive. "I understand the need for order, but we also need to recognize that we're human. Can't we have some flexibility for family gatherings or emergencies?" This perspective resonated with many attendees, igniting further debate. One neighbor proposed that we establish clearer guidelines defining what constitutes a legitimate reason for temporarily blocking driveways. "Let's create a policy that allows residents to communicate their needs without fear of repercussion," he suggested, adding that perhaps informal reminders could be issued to prevent misunderstandings. As discussions continued, so did the variety of opinions. Some residents proposed creating designated parking areas during community events to alleviate conflicts entirely. Others worried that such measures could lead to resentment, suggesting instead that neighbors should foster better communication. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that while Karen's rigid adherence to rules had prompted this gathering, a consensus seemed to emerge around finding balance, combining structure with empathy. Mr. Henderson concluded with a promise to draft a proposal incorporating everyone's feedback, ensuring that our decisions would reflect both order and community spirit. The meeting adjourned, leaving behind a mixture of hope and lingering divisions, as residents began to ponder how best to navigate our complicated dynamics moving forward. In the weeks that followed the HOA meeting, the tension between Karen and me escalated unexpectedly. It began with subtle exchanges, quick glares across the street as we encountered each other while watering our lawns or leaving for work. I could feel her scrutiny. It was as if she was waiting for another offense to report. One Saturday, I was out in front of my house, bags of soil and flower seeds in hand, excited to tackle a new garden project. In the midst of this task, Karen approached me with a determined stride. "You know," she began firmly, "the HOA has rules for a reason. We can't have people just doing whatever they want." I put down my gardening tools, feeling my irritation rise. Karen, this is my property, I replied, trying to stay calm. I'm just trying to beautify it, there's no need for this kind of confrontation. She crossed her arms, leaning in slightly. Beautifying doesn't include blocking driveways or making our community look chaotic, she insisted, her voice dripping with self-righteousness. The interaction felt surreal. Here we were, two adults arguing over something so trivial while bystanders looked on, clearly entertained by our standoff. As time went on, awkward encounters became more common. At the monthly neighborhood potluck, I overheard Karen sharing her version of events with other guests, painting herself as a hero defending community order against my supposed chaos. Watching her spin the narrative made my blood boil. No one wants to be cast as the villain in their own home. Then came the straw that broke the camel's back. One evening as I returned from grocery shopping, I saw Karen standing at her mailbox with a few neighbors gathered around her. They were laughing and pointing in my direction, apparently discussing my vegetable garden layout for all to hear. Unable to contain my anger any longer, I confronted her then and there. Really? I challenged loudly enough for everyone to hear. Is this what our community has come to? Groaning about vegetable gardens and airing grievances like children. The laughter died down instantly. Between strained smiles and forced chuckles among neighbors watching our clash unfold, it was clear that we had entered a new phase of conflict, one where passive-aggressive tactics took center stage over genuine neighborly interactions. After weeks of escalating tension, it became clear that a resolution was needed to restore peace within the neighborhood. The turning point came when Mr. Henderson organized an informal gathering aimed at fostering dialogue among residents, an opportunity for everyone to express their views and work toward compromise. He emphasized that while rules were essential, maintaining neighborly relationships was equally important. At the gathering, emotions ran high as Karen began by reiterating her concerns about community standards. We need to uphold our values, she insisted, her voice steady but tinged with defensiveness. However, as she spoke, I noticed a shift in the crowd. Some neighbors began to voice their frustrations about her rigid approach and the tension it had created. In a moment of courage, I decided to share my own perspective, framing it as part of a larger narrative about community spirit and understanding. I think we all want what's best for our neighborhood, I said, looking around at familiar faces. But we also have lives to live, sometimes things happen that require flexibility. Why can't we find a way to accommodate each other? Supportive murmurs spread through the group, and Lucy again stepped forward. I propose we create designated communication channels for anyone needing temporary adjustments, like blocking driveways during gatherings, so we can avoid misunderstandings moving forward. The conversation blossomed from there, with neighbors discussing how establishing a neighborhood communication app could help everyone stay informed without resorting to extreme measures like calling 911 over minor issues. Ultimately, we reached a consensus. A proposal would be drafted that included guidelines for driveway usage during events and an emphasis on respectful communication among neighbors. As tensions eased and laughter returned to the atmosphere, I could sense that we were moving towards not just rules but a renewed sense of community spirit. When Mr. Henderson concluded the gathering with a smile and optimism about our collective progress, it felt like a fresh start. While Karen remained skeptical about the changes, she seemed willing to consider them after seeing so many neighbors eager to engage constructively. For now, at least, our little corner of the world felt more harmonious, and perhaps that was the most significant victory of all. Reflecting on the tumultuous events that unfolded over the past few months, it's evident that community living often comes with its share of challenges. Initially, I viewed the neighborhood as a serene retreat, a place untouched by the friction typically associated with shared spaces. However, this experience has illuminated the complexities of neighborly relationships and the fundamental importance of open communication. One crucial insight I gained is the necessity of flexibility in maintaining harmony within our community. Every household comes with its unique circumstances, and understanding that occasional disruptions are a part of life is vital. My earlier mindset, which allowed me to overlook small inconveniences, clashed sharply with Karen's need for rigidity and order. It became abundantly clear that a middle ground was needed. Furthermore, I learned that conflict is not inherently negative. When managed thoughtfully, disagreements can lead to constructive conversations and innovative solutions. The informal gathering organized by Mr. Henderson exemplified this. It served as a platform for dialogue that allowed us to air grievances while fostering mutual respect among neighbors. It reminded me that when everyone feels heard, trust can be rebuilt. The experience also highlighted the importance of establishing clear communication channels. Our neighborhood now intends to implement tools that will enable residents to inform one another of temporary parking needs or gatherings ahead of time, reducing misunderstandings and unnecessary tensions. It emphasizes an emerging culture where neighbors can support each other rather than escalate conflicts. As our community navigates future challenges, these lessons will be instrumental in shaping how we interact with one another. Encouraging an environment where empathy overshadows strict adherence to rules will be key to ensuring our tight-knit neighborhood thrives in both spirit and harmony. Ultimately, this journey reconfirmed what community living should represent: a balance between personal freedom and collective well-being, allowing us to grow together despite our differences. As I look back on the entire ordeal, I can't help but reflect on what could have been done differently. Initially, I wish I had approached Karen more proactively before tensions escalated, perhaps inviting her over for coffee to explain my circumstances and why I temporarily blocked my driveway for family. A simple conversation might have helped bridge the gap between our differing perspectives and eased the anticipatory climate of suspicion that seemed to permeate our interactions. Furthermore, it became clear to me that my own defensiveness contributed to the conflict. When I confronted Karen about her gossip at the mailbox, I let my frustration get the better of me. Instead of communicating my feelings calmly, I allowed anger to dictate my response, turning what could have been a constructive discussion into a public confrontation. If I had taken a moment to breathe and choose my words more carefully, it's possible we could have come to an understanding rather than deepen the divide. This experience highlighted the vital need for community engagement and the importance of establishing trust among neighbors. I believe an ongoing forum or a neighborhood social would facilitate regular communication, allowing residents to discuss potential issues before they escalate. Conversations centered around understanding rather than confrontation could foster goodwill and prevent misunderstandings from festering. Moreover, I've learned that conflict isn't inherently bad; it can be a catalyst for growth if navigated properly. Instead of viewing disagreements through a lens of animosity, we can approach them as opportunities for dialogue and compromise, ultimately strengthening our bonds within the community. Ultimately, navigating shared spaces requires both adaptability and empathy. With these lessons in mind, I'm optimistic about the future of our neighborhood. If we emphasize respectful communication and commitment to understanding one another, we can foster an environment where everyone feels valued, a true testament to what a community should represent.